Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. Freedom we all hold dear, now is at stake. Humbling your hearts to God, saves from the chastening rod. Seek the way pilgrims trod, Christians away. Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet their doom. Trumpets will sound. All of the dead shall rise, righteous meet in the skies, going where no one dies, heavenward bound. Ooh. I didn't see that last line. Oh, it's back over here on the other page. How about that? I know it's there, but it wasn't written. Okay. Again, as we talked about songs from the very beginning, it's Jesus' songbook. So there are songs that we kind of know by heart, like all the Jews had. We knew. How many of you knew that song? Okay, everybody knew that song. And so we all knew the last line was supposed to be there, right? Even though we didn't see it, it's like, whoa! And that's good. We're going to see some lines this week and talk about how that works together. But I picked this song. Yeah, I pick a song every week, hopefully to kind of help us grab something. I picked this song for one reason. I can remember growing up and singing this song, and this was always a happy song, right? Even though it starts off, trouble sometimes are here, but you get Jesus coming, right? It's a kind of happy, pick-me-up song. But there was one line that just makes me batty in this song. Jesus coming soon, morning or mine or noon. And what's the next line? Many will meet their doom, right? And we're all happy. But the words coming out of my mouth is a lot of y'all are going to hell. Right? Is that what it says? That's it. Okay. We're not, no, we're not choosing up sides, but that's what we're singing. We're singing this happy song, and in the middle of the happy song, a lot of you guys are going to hell. Right? And it just didn't fit. Right? It doesn't seem to fit. What we're going to talk about this morning are what are called imprecatory psalms. Imprecatory. It's a big word, means cursing. There's some psalms that we have that are as bad or worse. No, they're worse than even the song we just talked about, right? We've seen that song for years and years and years, and most of us have probably never even thought about the little thing that just irritated me, right? Otherwise, when I sing that song, I say, "Many will meet the groom." Okay, I've changed the words to fit my theology and make me feel a little better. Even though the other part's true, it just doesn't seem. I don't like that. Okay. All right, imprecatory psalms are like that. I'm going to give you some numbers of different ones you can read, and we're going to look at a few of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them in the book of Psalms. 35, 55, 69, 79, 109, and 137. I'm looking at Psalms. Okay. Those are Psalms that are classified and called imprecatory Psalms. And let's go ahead and look at 35, and that'll kind of get us looking and seeing what they look like. Psalm 35. David spent a good part of his life, in his early life, struggling and having lots of enemies. Saul would be after him. Other people were after him. It's not easy once you become the anointed because everybody else would like to be king too, apparently. Before we do it, again, I always like to, not a real review, but I want to do this because it just, parallelism. What is parallelism? Okay, same thing. That's what, but again, the idea is we're going to call, this is the phrase I want you to, this is the one that's going to be on the test. Rhyme of thought. Okay? The words don't rhyme, the thoughts rhyme. Okay? We talked about different types. We have synonymous, right? We have antithetical. We have what's called emblematic, climactic. Those are a couple of them. There's another one, synthetic, which basically takes in everything else that's not included there. Okay? The idea is synonymous means the same thing, like you talked about. One line repeats the second one. Antithetical, one line is opposite from the other one. Emblematic, where something stands for something. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for you. Right? That's an emblem, a symbol of something. And climactic, where it kind of is building to a point. All right? Yeah, the Ascension song. Oh, yes. Okay. So again, keep in mind, as we're reading this psalm, you can kind of see some of the parallels there, okay? You ready? Look at that first verse. It sticks out. Contend, O Lord, with those who contend with me. Fight against those who fight against me. All right? So again, David's got enemies, and his idea is, God, fight for me. These next two verses go together. Take hold of buckler and shield, and rise for my help. Draw also the spear and the battle axe to meet those who pursue me. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. Let those be ashamed and dishonored who seek my life. Let those be turned back and humiliated who devise evil against me. Let them be like the chaff before the wind, with the angel of the Lord driving on them. Let their way be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them. For without cause they hid their net for me. Without cause they dug a pit for my soul. Let destruction come upon them unawares, and let the net which they hid catch himself. Into that very destruction let him fall. And my soul shall rejoice in the Lord. It will exult in his salvation. Let me stop there. Everybody has an enemy. Right? Everybody has an enemy. It is the world we live in. As much as I would love to get along with everybody, some people just don't want to get along, period. And there's not a lot you can do about it. And the thing is this approach doesn't seem to fit with what Jesus has told me, right? What's Jesus told me to do about my enemies? Love them, right? Love your enemies. What's David saying? Kill them. God, get my enemies. Okay? So this it doesn't fit very well, right? I mean, you look at it. All these things he says to do, and then you get to verse 9 where after he has said that he wants them to fall into destruction, and then he says, and my soul shall rejoice in the Lord. Yay! You got my enemies, right? So these are hard passages for us. Yes, sir. Okay. That's close. That's good. I like that. But it gets worse. Okay? I mean, if you really look at the thing, this is not a, let's look at a bad one. Okay? A really, really bad one. Psalm 109. Yes, sir. I like that. Psalm 109. All right. Let's look at this one. This one's fun. O God of my praise, do not be silent, for they have opened the wicked and deceitful mouth against me. They have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They have surrounded me with words of hatred and fought against me without cause. In return of my love, they act as accusers, but I am in prayer. Thus they have repaid me evil for good and hatred for my love. All right, you ready? Now let's watch what he wants them to do. Appoint a wicked man over him. Let an accuser stand at his right hand. When he is judged, let him come forth guilty, and let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few. Let another take his office. Let his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. It says worse. Let his children wander around and beg. Let them seek sustenance far from their ruined homes. Let the creditor seize all that he has. Let strangers plunder the product of his labor. Wow. Okay? I've wished bad things upon people. Okay? Hatred. Yes. God, not just let him die, let his children be miserable. Okay? Think about that. That's how does this fit with the man after God's own heart? How, seriously, how do I make that go together? Help me. He's what? David's not a good man. They it comes upon the whole nation. Right. Okay. And we don't like to talk about that. We don't like to mention a God of wrath or the wrath of God. But is it possible that maybe, just maybe, some of this is the nature of God? Right? We have a warrior spirit. Right. Right. It's not very popular. You were going to say? And that is, I think that's it. Yes, Frank. Demolish them. Yes. Okay. So again, but we've come now, and I hate to do this, but it's almost like, and people will talk about this like there's an Old Testament God of vengeance and a New Testament God of mercy, right? But that's not the case. Okay? And I think that's important for us to realize and recognize. The fact of the matter is, all of us at some time, some way, somewhere or another, have an enemy, right? We just nodded about it. Yes, we all have enemies. The question is, how are we going to deal with them? How did David deal with his enemies? That's it in a nutshell. Okay? That's it. One of the things that I learned in my life, uh, your feelings are okay. Whatever you feel is okay. I learned this work. My first job out of college, my first long-term job. I worked with kids that had issues, and one of the things they kept telling, whatever these kids, your feelings are okay. Your feelings are okay. Your feelings are okay. The problem is how we act on our feelings. One of the things we try to do is teach kids to verbalize. We got there and they would tell me, okay, if a kid cusses in anger, we let it go. What? And kids cuss and cuss. They were cussing in anger. Now, if they just cuss, we stopped it. This is a Christian place. If they're cussing in anger, we don't do anything because we want these kids to learn to verbalize their anger. If they can verbalize their anger rather than acting it out, that's much better. Well, that's what David is doing. David is saying, God, you take care of my enemies. Here's what I want you to do. Now, does God do this to all his enemies? No, not necessarily. But he's put that back onto God to do that, as opposed to, that's not what I want to do, right? That's not how I want to feel. I want to do something. And so that is part of it. I think it's the biggest part of it. I don't know about a lot of this. That's the thing that just kept coming to mind. I've read about these and I've studied these and I've looked at it and seen what people with degrees on top of degrees talked about it. And there's really not a great answer other than it must be okay to say that. It must be okay to say that. It must be, and you can tell God. He'll be okay. Maybe that's the thing to grab. God can handle you being mad at your neighbor. Does that make sense? God can handle that. And it's, maybe that's a thing for me. It's okay for me to feel that rather than to act on it. So that's the biggest part of imprecatory Psalms. We'll look at one other here. Yes, sir. I think what it says is that it is out of the heart that these actions come, right? That's Jesus is talking about. That's when they're talking about eating. What can you eat? And he says it's not what goes into the man, but what comes out, and that because they come from our feelings and our actions. There's an appropriate way to do this. One of the things we're going to hit. Well, let's Psalm 69. That was one of our imprecatory psalms, right? Right. as far as possible, be at peace with all men. Right. That's the key. Let God take that. Okay? When David has these things, he's not stuffing them down inside himself. He's saying, God, here's my feelings. Here's what I want. He's not doing it. He's saying, here's who I am. It's where I am. And that's natural. Okay? It's just as natural. God has put all these different urges and things in us that are part of our life, right? Food. All right? Food is a great, wonderful thing. We talk about the feast that awaits us one day, right? Because it's just a natural thing. But I can misuse that. So all these thoughts, all these feelings are okay as long as they're focused back towards God. And that's the problem, is I lose that focus. You had something. Right. Right. So again, that's the whole thing is where do we take this and what do we do with this? And the fact of the matter is, all these things were things that the psalmist felt. All right. Let's look at 69 again. We haven't looked at it, but it's one of them. You can see they all kind of start off the same way. Approaching God. Save me, O God, for the waters have threatened my life. I have sunk deep in mire. There is no foothold. I've come to deep waters, and flood overflows me. I am weary with my crying. My throat is parched. My eyes fail while I wait for my God. Those who hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of my head. Those who would destroy me are powerful, being wrongfully my enemies. What I did not steal, I then have to restore. O God, it is you who knows my folly, and my wrongs are not hidden from you. May those who wait for you not be ashamed through me, O Lord, God of hosts. May those who seek you not be dishonored through me, O God of Israel. Because of your sake I have borne reproach. Dishonor has covered my face. I have become estranged from my brothers, an alien to my mother's sons. For zeal for your house has consumed me, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me. Does that sound familiar? Anybody remember that verse? Zeal for thy house has consumed me. The last time Jesus comes into Jerusalem, he goes into the temple, and he walks in the temple, and what's he see? People changing money, exchanging money, ripping people off. And he does what? He makes a cord and he drives them out. And that's the verse that's quoted right there. John, this is, I think, zeal for your house consumed me. I think that's actually from, we get that in the Gospel of John, but it is that whole thing of that's again Jesus, all right? It was okay for him to be mad at a certain point. Nobody said, oh, Jesus, you were wrong for driving those people out of God's house. Okay? Read a few more of them here, a couple more verses. While I wept in my soul with fasting, it became my reproach. When I made sackcloth my clothing, I became a byword. Those who sit in the gate talk about me. I am the song of drunkards. But as for me, my prayer is to you, O Lord, at an acceptable time. O God, in the greatness of your loving kindness, Answer me with your truth. So again, you can see, even though he wants all these things, he's asking for God to take care of it. Even the point you can see, you keep reading there. Look at verse 21. They gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst, they gave me vinegar to drink. Does that sound familiar? Right? So you can see all these things, how they tie back. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 And that's again, that's why these are such good things for us to grab a hold of, is to understand, again, we do have enemies, and it's okay. It's okay to be angry. But the idea, again, is uh, I'm not going to let the enemies get to a certain point. That's what Jesus in the temple. He gets to the temple, and he's like, you guys have crossed the line. Get out. Right? So, again, that's what we're seeing here. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 You take, again, if you keep reading this one of my favorite, least favorite verses in the Bible is here, verse 28, talking about these people. Here we go. This is the song we sang earlier. May they be blotted out of the book of life, and may they not be recorded with righteousness. What's it mean to be blotted out of the book of life? Many will meet their doom, right? Okay? So maybe again, while we're singing this song, it's okay. Even though it bothered me as a youth, I had to look back and go, you know what? That's okay. For some people to meet their doom is all right. I'm not deciding that. That's God's decision. But it's a reality. Again, I'd love for it to all be rainbows and lollipops, but it's not. And that's what this reminds us of. It's not all good. It's not all perfect. But instead of me taking things into my hands, I say, back up and let God look at this. Okay? These are difficult Psalms. You can kind of go through and read them, and you see just some, again, can you say anything worse to somebody then? May you be blotted out of the book of life. Yes. Right. And that's it, too. That let go, let God. It's a phrase you can hear, but you think about it from that perspective. Otherwise, I just get eaten up, right? Because I'll hang on to that. I will hold on to that anger, that frustration, to the fear, whatever's driving it, if I don't give it away. Yes. Right. Right. And again, part of that again is understanding who the enemies really are and what they're doing, and their fact that these accusations. See, I'm acting righteously, and they're turning my following and doing after you into making me bad. Right. That's so they're not. They're my enemies, but the idea that they're my enemies is I am the follower of you. So they're your enemies, God. That's kind of, and that's kind of how having to back this thing up and saying, okay, they're sheep and goats. And God, I know that God would love every man to do right, but they don't. Right. Yeah, yeah. I see what you're saying, but it's okay for him to feel that and think that God gets to make that decision. I see what you're saying. But it is, and that's the point. Again, you're going to have people that drive you to that point. And that the answer is, instead of hanging on to it, instead of trying to stuff it down, instead of acting on it or saying something to them, say something to God about it. One more thing. Yes. Right. 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 And that's the thing. And as we look at these, because we're at a couple more different types of psalms to see, uh, they go this gamut of the songs that we sing. Uh, we have love songs, right? And we have other songs that are not love songs, right? Of unrequited love, where I didn't get the love back, right? And then we have some songs that are just, I'm angry, and we joke about them in some ways, but they're there. Uh, yes. That's again, all of this anger is towards people. He's saying, because I'm doing what I'm supposed to, and these people are going against what what I'm supposed to do. So it's not my anger is my neighbor doing something that I just don't like, right? And that's different. We're not seeing that in these psalms. It's not these guys are just the guy irritates me. He keeps parking in front of my house. Why is he parking in front of my house? God, get him. No, that's not it. It is, I'm living the way you've taught me to live. I'm being and living as God's anointed. And this guy is coming against God's anointing. So maybe it is we use this term, righteous indignation. But the idea is, again, when I have that, is what to do with it. And you think of it from the idea of churches and how churches react and deal with sin. How do we deal with sin? You know, I've got to be loving. I've got to be kind. I'm concerned about this person, but I also know that a little leaven can bother the whole loaf of bread, right? And so it's a very tough place to be in. Elders, I appreciate what you do, because I know that's a tightrope, and that's what we're seeing here. Here's David again ruling over his people, and our mission is again to make disciples, and we go out there, and we would love for everybody to be here, but at the same time, it's also okay to understand there's some people who are fighting to be anti-disciples. And it's okay to stand up and say no to that. But the way to do it is not go out and protest against that. It's to say, God, you take care of our enemies. Does that make, because that's what churches have a reputation for doing, right? Churches have a reputation for saying, oh, let's just say gay. All right, the gay issue. And churches gay people typically hate churches. You know why? Because churches have hated gay people. Right? And instead of saying, and getting on our knees and saying, God, you take care of this situation, we've lashed out. Does that make sense? And it can be that way. I picked one, but it can be that way with any sin. Divorce used to be the scarlet letter, right? There was a time where if you got divorced, people just quit coming to church, period. Or when I went through my divorce, I sat on the back row of a big church for years hiding. There was this stigma that went with it. And some of it was said out loud. Right? So we can pick anything and use it. And again, I think the Psalms are a great example then of, okay, it's okay to understand this. We're going to have enemies. There are going to be problems. There's going to be bad. But the way to handle it is for not to lash out. It's not to bury it and act like it's not there. It's to say, God, you handle this. And it's okay for me to feel bad, to be angry, to be upset. But the idea is to let God handle it. Does that make sense? Again, what's that? And He will. A lot of times He will handle it for you. A lot of times, I got a feeling if you go back and look at these, what you can see for some of these Psalms, it says a Psalm of David when yada, yada, yada happened. Even some of these imprecatory Psalms. It's like when somebody was coming after David, when Saul was coming after him. Well, if we keep reading the story, we find out that God let David handle this with Saul. Yes, sir. Right. Right. That's a great thing. It does, and I would encourage you to do this at some point. Make a prayer journal, and then go back and look at it a year later, or 2 years later, and it is exactly what he talks about. These things that are huge issues that we prayed about and that were big things, and somehow or another they're gone. There you go. Thank you. We're going to look at royal psalms next week.